I'd like to share a story with you that best describes why I started getting interested in men's anxiety and why we don't get it. And it started in 2008, in April. But before I do that, I'd like to go back further than that and tell you a story of when I was just 20 years of age. And this evening I'd gone to my dojo, as I used to. I used to study karate, and it was a style called Fudoshin, which means immovable mind. And my time studying karate as a young man ended up being 8 years, and it was my complete life at the time. It taught me so much. And it taught me about mind and body. And what it really taught me is that everything is connected. Everything is connected. So this particular evening, when I'd gone along, at the end of training, I had to hold a concrete block, like this one here. And my role was to hold it in a position, something like that, and hold it very firmly. And his task was to break 4 of them, placed all around him, and mine was the first block. And this was the end of a black belt grading. And this guy was extremely talented. His technique was very good. He'd broken many blocks before. It really wasn't a problem. So I held the block. Mine was the first they had to break. And he got himself lined up in a position something like this. It's been a long while, so be kind to me. And he hit the block, but it didn't break. And our master said very quickly, "Use your other hand." And it still didn't break. And there were both of his hands quite damaged, and I think his spirit a little bit too. He stopped. And looking back on this, it was my first experience of seeing the power of anxiety. What can really happen, how it can stop us from doing something that we can do normally without any problem whatsoever. In his case, it was breaking a block. And at the end of the session, we went and sat downstairs as we normally would do and had a drink. And after a little while, I said to him, "So what do you think happened at your grading?" And he said, "Bob, I've got no idea. But what I can tell you," he said, "is I haven't slept well for the last 3 or 4 weeks, worrying about it. I was worried about breaking the blocks. Can you believe that?" I said, "Well, we've broken blocks before." And he said, "Yeah, but I just couldn't do it." And we started laughing a bit, and he started laughing at himself, how crazy it was. Was it the unbreakable block that someone had put in front of us, and this kind of stuff? And as we talked, you could feel almost his energy come back, and his confidence come back, and something changed within him. It's a long story, so I'm going to give you the short version. 4 weeks later, he took his grading again, and he smashed all the blocks first time, without any problem. And for me, this was, looking back actually, but this was something that really was a great example of what happens when we hold all of our stuff inside, when men don't talk about their fears, when we decide that we can deal with it all ourselves. We don't need to tell anyone about it because, as we know, especially the men in the audience know this, we're men and we're not frightened of anything. But it was amazing to see what happened when he talked about this, that he got his strength back. So fast forward a little bit from when I was 20 to April 2008, and I'd got home after being away for a couple of days, and the answer phone was flashing. It was unusual, and the message went something like this: "We're sorry to inform you that David Peter Falco passed away on April the 11th. Dave was one of my best friends. He lived in California, been there for 25 years. We used to ride motorbikes together. In fact, I'd ridden across the desert with him just 6 months before this message. And something happened with me at that moment in time. It was like there was a fast neural pathway hitting my emotional self, on my empathy. And I just found myself crying in an uncontrollable manner, just literally crying. And I walked downstairs into my kitchen and I hugged my wife. In fact, she hugged me. I just cried. And my 18-year-old daughter came down the stairs and I was sobbing. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I can't be crying in front of my daughter. It's ridiculous. You're going to sit. I feel really weak. I need to stop crying. I need to stop crying. Isn't that unbelievable? I'd actually just lost one of my best friends, somebody I'd known since he was 18. And my natural instinct as a man was to stop crying. And it really made me think when I thought about it afterwards, how crazy this stuff is. What is it about us men that really struggle to show our emotions, to talk about our fears, to let things go? The problem I had as well is that Dave was a real fun guy. He was that classic person who enjoyed life. He was a very successful businessman. He built these multi-million-dollar homes north of San Francisco. I mean, he had the life, if I'd put it onto the slides here, you'd just be going, wow, let's do that, But there was a serious side to him as well. And what I found out since is that he was supposed to be taking some medication that he perhaps thought he didn't need to. He'd had all sorts of stress going on in his life, and he decided he could deal with it because, after all, he was a man, and we can deal with all this stuff ourselves. We don't need to share it, because if we share it, we'll be weak. So we need to stay strong and deal with it ourselves. And I found myself, I'd been cognitive coaching at that point for about 9 years, and I found myself thinking, if only I'd have talked to him, he'd have been all right. I call it the Messiah complex. I could have saved him. And of course, we'll never know. And I've worked and got over that. But what it started for me was a journey that I need to make sure when I've got clients in front of me, or when I'm working in industry, I also work as a troubleshooter in industry, that I really try to get to the men. And I get them to understand that if we hold all this stuff inside, you could be another statistic, like my friend Dave. And I want to share something with you just now, which I hope can be helpful as well. And it's really going to help me, because even though I'm standing up here giving you my message, I have my own anxiety going on right now. So I want to do a little something together with everybody, which is a technique I developed. I didn't actually, because it's called breathing. And I want us all to do it together. And we're just going to do 2 breaths. We're going to breathe in, and then we're going to breathe out slightly longer than we breathe in. And at the end, we're just going to sit and feel what that's like, and then we're going to do it a second time. That's all. If you can, close your eyes. If one of you could keep them open in case anybody takes my wallet, that would be great. But I want to do it together. So first of all, just relax. And now, breathe in. And then out. Just relax at the end. And back in. And out. Just relax. Thank you. If you find yourself getting anxious about things and you've got the opportunity, you don't have to go into a Zen pose. You don't have to close your eyes. Just breathe a little bit. It just calms the brain. It's a very interesting method and technique. Unfortunately, it's not as powerful as talking about your fears. It's telling people what's going on. So I spent a lot of time over those next years dealing with things, and dealing with my challenges and dealing with other people's challenges, and getting into, what might it be that stops men talking about anxiety and the science around it and so on. And in 2014, my father passed away, and that was a challenging time. We'd had a difficult relationship. But the most challenging thing actually was when I saw him 2 days before his death, on his deathbed, we would say. And we said our goodbyes. And as we said our goodbyes, I had a very strange experience in that I seemed to see into his eyes this wonderful, caring, gentle man that I'd never met. It really shocked me. And it shocked me for 2 reasons, I think. I came out and I was thinking, wow. And this new emotional self of me means I cry a bit now and then. So I was actually crying a bit and thinking, what was that about? But the thing that was fascinating was that, for me, I'd never experienced that. So I felt like I'd missed him. But also it was lovely to see him like that before he died. But I thought to myself, what's he missed? What has he missed through being this successful businessman who's got to be strong and he mustn't show any fear. What does he miss with his relationships with other people? It was just amazing. And then my next challenge was in November 2016. I'd been to the hospital, had a few checkups, went in and saw the specialist, and he said, "I'm sorry to tell you that you've got prostate cancer and it's aggressive. And the prognosis is typically 6 months." And it was more than 3 years ago, so you can imagine I'm very grateful, very grateful. But if you want to focus on what's important to you in life, let me tell you, you do when you think you've only got a few months left to live. And the love of my wife and my children was wonderful, and it was really helpful. And I had lots of messages from well-wishers, people I know. Some of them are actually part of this team and in the audience. And every time I got these messages, I cried a bit. But it made me feel okay. But I got messages also from 2 of the men that I know. They never really got into the emotional stuff. They thought kind of all this stuff I do is a bit, oh yeah, it's okay, but men don't do that. And I got these messages, and one of them was like a eulogy. How many people get to read their eulogy? It was interesting. It was wonderful. And as I read this stuff, I cried a bit, but I got stronger. And it's a really strange thing to say, but it was almost like there was some energy coming back into me because of the love I'd had from other men. You know, we take the love often, if we're lucky, in our childhood from our mums and perhaps our sisters and some of our female friends, perhaps for me, almost for granted. But when this happened with these men, it was just absolutely amazing, and it really made a difference. So I started shouting and hollering about, I need to get men to understand that they need to talk about their stuff. Stop. What's it all about? Why do you keep hiding it? It's not strong to hide your fears. It's strong to talk about your stuff. And I started doing this at a coffee shop in Banbury, and the local chap there that I know quite well was a boxing club owner. And he said, "Well, will you come and talk to some of the guys after the boxercise class on Monday?" I said, "Yeah, it'd be great. Get those big boxers in there and get them talking about their real emotional stuff. It will be fantastic." And actually it went all right. And 2.5 years later, I was still doing it. You get 20 or 30 people in there. It's a pub next door. They're on tea and coffee and biscuits. And we just talk about mental health. And the difference apparently it's made is that, I've got some of these men talking about their story and what they've gone through. And all of a sudden, they've started getting better and handled life better. And if you've got the biggest, toughest guy to sort of talk about his stuff, then you found everybody else had stuff to talk about. And we did a lot of funny stuff as well. I mean, the things we talked about were actually great fun as well. Like we would talk about car rage. That comes up a bit, doesn't it? I used to say, isn't it fascinating? You're driving along the road and all of a sudden someone pulls out in front of you at the last minute. And you decide they've been waiting for you personally to drive down the road. I mean, they're not a crap driver. They've been waiting for you. They've been sitting there all morning waiting for you to come along. Because now, that's how you feel. What does he or she think they're doing, pulling out in front of me like that? And you want to fight. I mean, there's enough crazy people in the world to create fights already, isn't there? Us ordinary folk don't need to be doing that. But this is how it goes. And for men, sometimes, and there are some women as well that have told me the same stories, but for men, there is this whole thing about it. It's almost like someone's trying to challenge me with my strength. And rather than me say, it's okay and let it go, I need to fight it. I need to fight it. And it's a real challenge, and it's something that we really need to move away from if we want to have a healthy life. So you can go down the gym and you can work on your biceps and your lats and whatever other muscles we've got. Used to know them, I don't. But inside, your body can be falling apart. It can be falling apart because when you hit the stress response system, which is supposed to be for emergencies, and that pressure cooker is building up and up and up and up and keeps coming back on with no relief valve, you are starting to destroy your body. And that can end up, and does end up, often with heart attack, strokes, blood pressure problems, lowered immunity, stuff that will potentially take you a lifetime to recover from. Hopefully it doesn't, but it can potentially if you can't stop doing it. Rather than just saying, it's okay. Oh, look at that clown pulled out in front of me. I better pull back a bit. And I hope they'll be all right, because Who knows what's happened with them when they pulled out? But come back. No. And the problem, the big problem for me, is that we still find it so hard to talk about our fears. We still find it so hard to talk about our fears. And we let it get on top of us. And the way we can stop this is by starting to talk to other men about what's going on. And I'm not a great believer of saying, how are you doing? I say, yeah, I'm fine, thanks, great. Okay? I don't like that. If you say, how are you doing again, personally, that doesn't work for me either, because men get a bit irritated. What do you mean, how am I doing? I just told you. Yeah? But if you sense that somebody's not okay, you're probably right. So if you say, how are you doing? They say, I'm okay. So do you fancy a coffee tomorrow? Or is you getting together? Or a few of us are going for a walk. And start talking to those people, but also be prepared to talk to your mates and say, listen, I'm really struggling at the moment. Have you got a bit of time? Could you have a coffee with me? I don't know what's going on. I'm getting really stressed about stuff. Because if we do it, it's a two-way street. And they'll come back to us. And we talk about all these changes in the world, okay, and this is a very short talk, but this is massive. If we can get men to deal with this stuff, all of a sudden we're dealing with the issues around ego, we're dealing with all these problems, we're starting to bring the whole thing down to a point where we're just being ourselves. It's like this Buddhist idea, isn't it, with a rope that the elephant's got and you're the other end of it. That's about how men are. And you're trying to pull it, and you just let it go, can't you? It's okay. Let it go. And that ability to just let it go will keep you alive a lot longer. And it will keep us in a world that could even be better, could be that big. If we say, look, actually, I really struggle with my stuff, and I don't know why. And the most important thing that I've learned through this is that anybody can help us. You could go to a professional, go to a counsellor, a coach, whatever. But if you talk to other men about it, there's something that changes dynamically. It's like we're all right now. It's not that there's something weak about me. Actually, the strength is to talk about what is going on and to be honest about it. And through my own lessons, I've got to that point and I'm trying to do all the work I can to do about that. And this was a great opportunity to talk to a group of people to say, please, if you know any men that you think are struggling, please just ask them how they are and do something with them. Get a coffee shop talk going every week. Get a walk and talk going. Go and have a chat. Get a fire pit going and sit around it and talk about the real stuff. Have a bit of fun with it. How are you doing with smiling at the moment? What do you mean, smiling? That's what I mean. You're not smiling, are you? Whatever. Have some fun with it. But please, let's get men to talk about their fears, and the men in the audience, talk about your stuff. Thank you.